A homeless man finds a lottery ticket in the trash, and what happened next left everyone astonished. Miguel woke up to the deafening noise of traffic echoing above his head. For months, the bridge on Constitucion Avenue had been his only refuge. The shadows of cars cast intermittent flashes on the ground, while a cold breeze slipped through the holes in his old blanket. The dampness of the concrete seemed to cling to his body, reminding him that the day had just begun. With a sigh, he slowly sat up, feeling the pain in his joints. He had slept poorly, as he did every night, and his stomach growled with an intensity he couldn't ignore. In front of him, his worn-out backpack held everything he had left in life: a tattered coat, a pair of torn socks, and a half-finished pack of cookies someone had given him 2 days earlier. "One more day," he murmured, as if those words were his mantra, the only thing keeping him going. The sun was beginning to light up the streets of the historic center. Shop doors opened slowly, and merchants arranged their goods, while office workers hurried past with their coffees in hand. Miguel blended among them, walking with his head down and his shoulders slumped. "Would you have something to eat?" he asked softly to a woman selling juice on a corner. She looked at him indifferently before shaking her head. "Could you spare me a coin, sir?" he insisted with a man waiting for the bus. The man simply ignored him, as if he hadn't heard a thing. He sighed, resigned. He had learned not to take those rejections personally, but every look of disdain, every silence, weighed on his soul. He felt that people saw him as if he didn't exist, or worse, as if his presence were a nuisance. After several failed attempts, he reached a bakery. The smell of freshly baked bread made his stomach growl fiercely. With some hesitation, he approached the counter. "Could you give me a piece of bread?" "I don't have money, but I promise I'll repay it someday." The baker looked at him with suspicion, but after a few seconds handed him a small piece. "That's all I can give you. Take care." "Thank you," he said with a slight bow of his head. Though modest, the bread's flavor was a balm for his weary body. Back at the bridge, he sat in his usual corner. From there, he watched the city's comings and goings. Families crossing, students laughing, couples holding hands. All of that, which had once been his, now felt like a distant dream. As he bit into the last pieces of bread, a memory suddenly struck him. It was a sunny day in the park, and Anna, his wife, was sitting beside him. She had taken his hand and, with that smile that always lit up his life, had told him, "As long as we're together, we can handle anything." The memory hit him like a storm, flooding him with a sadness he couldn't contain. He closed his eyes, feeling tears well up, and murmured, "Forgive me, Anna. Forgive me for failing you." It was then that a soft bark pulled him out of his grief. He opened his eyes, and to his surprise, a small puppy was watching him from a few feet away. She had scruffy fur and the sweetest eyes he had seen in a long time. Noticing that he was looking at her, the little dog wagged her tail timidly and carefully approached, as if she knew he wouldn't hurt her. "And where did you come from?" Miguel asked, crouching to extend his hand. The puppy sniffed his fingers before licking them eagerly. She was thin, clearly abandoned, and wore a broken collar barely hanging from her neck. "You don't have anyone either, do you?" he murmured as he stroked her head. The puppy wagged her tail more strongly, as if to say that now she did have someone. He looked at the bread remains in his hand and, without thinking, broke off a piece to give her. The puppy devoured it quickly, instantly winning his affection. "I'll call you Luz," he said, watching her curl up next to his backpack. "Because, believe it or not, you've brought a little light into my life." That night, for the first time in a long time, Miguel didn't feel completely alone. Luz nestled beside him, sharing the warmth of the tattered blanket. While the traffic roared above their heads, he closed his eyes and allowed a small glimmer of hope to filter into his heart. In the midst of darkness, the puppy wagged her tail, as if to remind him that even in the worst moments, there is always something worth moving forward for. The next day, he woke to the familiar noise of traffic, but this time something was different. Luz was still asleep beside him, her body relaxed and trusting, as if she had finally found a home. As he prepared to face another day of walking and rejection, he gently petted the puppy. "Come on, Luz. Today will be a better day. I promise." Miguel and Luz walked together through the streets of Querétaro. The morning air felt less harsh, and though the man's stomach was still empty, the puppy's company gave him a sense of warmth he hadn't felt in a long time. Luz walked energetically at his side, wagging her tail whenever someone passed by, as if she wanted to attract some attention or maybe a bit of food. "Patience, little one. Today we'll get something better, you'll see," Miguel said, stroking her head. The puppy responded with a soft bark, as if she understood every word. He decided to try his luck in the downtown streets again. He knew many would ignore him, but with Luz by his side, he felt he could withstand the looks of disdain. Maybe, even, someone would take pity on them seeing them together. The day went by with failed attempts and small moments of hope. An old woman gave him a piece of bread and a glass of water, which he shared with Luz under the shade of a tree. Later, a young man leaving a cafe dropped a coin into his hand without saying a word but with a faint smile on his face. Miguel looked at the coin with a mixture of gratitude and sadness. It was little, but enough to buy something more for Luz. He knew the puppy depended completely on him, and that forced him to push himself, even when his body felt like it couldn't go on. "This is for you," he said as he placed a piece of bread in front of Luz. The little dog devoured it eagerly, filling him with a strange satisfaction. He felt like he was taking care of someone else, and that idea kept him moving. In the afternoon, as they rested on a park bench, a well-dressed man walked past them. He carried a briefcase and walked quickly, but something made him stop. He looked at Miguel and then at Luz, as if something in the scene had touched him. "What's your name?" the man asked, his tone curious but kind. Miguel looked up, surprised by the question. He wasn't used to anyone speaking to him directly, much less with such interest. "My name is Miguel," he replied cautiously, gauging the stranger's intentions. "I'm Tomas," the man said, extending his hand. "Have you eaten today?" Miguel hesitated before answering, but finally nodded. "A little. A lady gave me some bread this morning." Tomas nodded, glancing at Luz, who stared at him with bright eyes and her tongue hanging out. "And her?" Miguel smiled, petting the puppy. "She's fine. I always make sure she eats something, even if it's just a little." The man seemed to reflect for a moment before opening his briefcase. He pulled out a bill and handed it to Miguel, along with a small pack of cookies he carried. "Here. It's not much, but I hope it helps." Miguel accepted the bill with trembling hands. He couldn't remember the last time someone had given him anything more than a coin. "Thank you. You didn't have to. We all need help sometimes," Tomas replied. Then, as if something in him urged him to stay, he sat on the bench beside Miguel. The gesture caught the homeless man by surprise. No one, in all the time he had lived on the street, had ever shown so much interest in talking to him. "How long have you been here?" Tomas asked, pointing toward the park and the bridge visible in the distance. Miguel sighed, feeling the weight of the question. "Months. I lost everything after my wife passed away." His voice broke at the end, and he lowered his gaze, unable to hold it. Tomas remained silent, giving him space to continue. "I had a good life, you know, a job, a house. But when Anna died, everything collapsed. I lost the strength to go on, let the debts consume me, and before I knew it, I had nothing left." The man beside him nodded slowly. "I'm very sorry for your loss. Sometimes life can take everything from us at once, but that doesn't mean all is lost." Miguel looked at him with a mix of disbelief and curiosity. "What do you know about that?" Tomas gave a sad smile. "More than you think. I've also had moments when I thought there was no way out, but someone helped me when I needed it most. That's why I'm here now." The stranger's words resonated in Miguel in an unexpected way. There was something genuine in his tone, something that made him want to listen more. That afternoon, as Tomás spoke to him about the importance of finding small steps to move forward, Miguel felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The well-dressed man didn't look at him with pity or disdain. He simply saw him as someone who needed a push, a spark, to start again. Before leaving, Tomás said goodbye with a promise. "I'll come by the bridge tomorrow. If you need anything else, don't hesitate to ask me." Miguel nodded, unsure what to say. He watched him walk away with the briefcase in hand, feeling that the encounter was more than a coincidence. That night, under the bridge, he lay down next to Luz, who slept peacefully at his side. As he watched the lights of the cars pass by, he couldn't help but wonder if Tomás would really return. Maybe things can change, he thought, stroking the puppy's fur. For the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to imagine a different future. Miguel was sitting by the bridge, with Luz curled at his feet, when he saw Tomás approaching. The man walked with a firm step, carrying a bag in one hand and a hot coffee in the other. Miguel couldn't help but feel a mix of surprise and gratitude. The stranger had kept his promise. "Good morning," Tomás greeted, offering him the coffee and the bag that contained a couple of sandwiches. "I hope this helps you start the day." Miguel accepted the food with a faint smile. "Thank you. You really didn't have to." Tomás sat beside him, carefully setting his briefcase on the ground. "I told you I'd be back. Sometimes all we need is someone to remind us we're not alone." The man didn't reply immediately. He watched Luz, who wagged her tail enthusiastically while nibbling on a piece of bread Tomás had given her. Something in the puppy's carefree attitude drew a smile from him. "You know, I hadn't laughed in months until she showed up," Miguel said, pointing at Luz. Tomás looked at him with interest. "Looks like Luz found you when you needed her most." "Yes, I think she's the one who rescued me," Miguel admitted. As they ate, the conversation took a deeper turn. Tomás, who until then had avoided talking about himself, decided to share something from his past. "There was a time when I was very close to losing everything," he began, looking toward the horizon. "I had a business that failed and, for a while, I felt worthless. It took me years to get back on my feet, but someone believed in me when I had stopped believing in myself." Miguel listened attentively. There was something in Tomás's words that resonated inside him, as if they both shared a similar experience. "And what did you do to change things?" he finally asked. Tomás looked him straight in the eyes, realizing that failure is not the end, just another chapter. "But I also had to accept the help of others, even though at first it was hard. No one can move forward alone, Miguel." Tomás's words made him reflect. Since Anna's accident, he had locked himself in his pain, convinced that no one could understand him. But now, in front of this man who spoke with such empathy, something in his heart began to open. "I lost everything too," Miguel admitted, his voice breaking. "I had a life that now feels like a dream, a business, a house, and Anna." Tomás let him continue, knowing there were words Miguel needed to release. "She was the most incredible woman I've ever known. We met at a fair, you know? I was just starting in real estate and had a small stand. She came up to ask for information but ended up scolding me because my brochures were poorly designed." The man chuckled softly. "Sounds like someone special." "She was," Miguel went on, with a nostalgic smile. "She was creative, fun, and always saw the good in people. Thanks to her, the business grew. She had a gift for understanding what people wanted. She was a landscape designer. Taught me so much. But He stopped, staring at the ground, as if the words were too hard to say. "I became obsessed with work. I thought I was doing the right thing. That building an empire would secure our future. But the more the business grew, the more I drifted away from her. I didn't see it until it was too late." A memory overtook him, vivid and heartbreaking. It was a rainy night, weeks before the accident. Anna was in the kitchen, waiting for him to come back from a meeting. When he finally arrived, exhausted and still with his phone in hand, she looked at him with sadness. "Miguel, Do you realize how long it's been since we had dinner together? He barely lifted his gaze. I'm sorry, love. It's been a tough day. Tomorrow, I'll make it up to you, okay? But Anna shook her head. You always say that, and tomorrow never comes. When did we stop being a team? That conversation was etched in his memory. He had tried to ignore those words, but now, sitting under the bridge, they echoed with overwhelming force. We argued that night, Miguel confessed, his voice breaking. She wanted us to take a break, to leave everything for a few days, but I only thought about the business. I convinced myself I was doing the right thing, and all I did was lose her. Tomas placed a hand on his shoulder, a simple gesture but full of meaning. Losing someone you love is never easy, and regret can consume us. But Anna wouldn't want you to stay trapped there. I'm sure she'd want you to find a way to move forward. Miguel nodded slowly, letting Tomas's words sink deep inside. That afternoon, after saying goodbye, he began to think about what he could do to change his situation. He looked at Luz, trotting energetically at his side, and felt a spark of determination he hadn't felt in years. Passing by a flower shop, he noticed the plants outside were neglected. He remembered the days when, together with Anna, he would design gardens for his real estate projects. He stopped and, without thinking too much, approached the owner. "Excuse me," he said, his voice timid. "Would you like me to help fix your plants? I can do it in exchange for some food or a little money." The man, who looked exhausted, eyed him curiously. "Do you know about gardening?" "A little. I used to work in landscaping. I could give them good maintenance." The owner watched him for a moment before nodding. "All right, do it. And I'll give you something to eat when you're done." That afternoon, he worked with his hands full of soil for the first time in years. Luz ran around, chasing leaves and barking at birds. When he finished, the flower shop owner was impressed. "This looks much better than I expected," he admitted, as he handed him a plate of food and some coins. "If you want, you could come back next week. There's still more to do." Miguel smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest he hadn't experienced in a long time. "Thank you. I'll come back." As he walked back to the bridge with Luz, he felt something different. It wasn't just gratitude for the food or money. It was the feeling that maybe, just maybe, he was taking the first step towards something better. He returned to the flower shop early in the morning, with Luz wagging her tail enthusiastically as she watched him work. The plants from the day before already looked greener and tidier, a change not unnoticed by the customers passing by. The flower shop owner, an older man named Ernesto, welcomed him with a smile. "You know, you've saved me a lot of time. I'd been wanting to do this for months but could never find the moment," Ernesto said, observing the freshly aligned pots. Miguel, his hands covered in soil, shrugged. "I'm glad I could help. It feels good to be useful again. And would you be interested in doing something similar for my neighbor? He's got a fruit stand on the corner and is always complaining that the plants in front of his shop look like a jungle," Ernesto suggested, handing him some coins and a bag of fruit. That proposal lit something inside Miguel, the possibility that this work, though small, could open more doors. He nodded with a smile. "Of course, tell him I can go whenever he wants." Over the following weeks, Miguel began to receive more jobs. Besides the fruit stand, nearby businesses asked him to clean gardens or help with small fixes. Though the work was modest, to him it meant much more, a step toward regaining his dignity. Luz, for her part, seemed to enjoy the attention. The shop owners always gave her scraps or petted her head, and her infectious energy even made customers smile. Miguel realized that his puppy wasn't just his companion, but also a kind of ambassador who softened people's initial distrust. With the money he was earning, Miguel began to save. At first, he used it only for food and small expenses, but soon he realized he could aspire to something more. One afternoon, while resting on a park bench near the bridge, Tomas approached, as he often did. He carried a coffee for him and some cookies for Luz, who ran toward him, wagging her tail. I see you're making progress, Tomas said, pointing to the tools Miguel carried in a bag. Yes, a little. I've kept myself busy, and that helps, he replied with a sincere smile. And what do you plan to do next? Tomas asked, watching him closely. Miguel fell silent, staring at the ground. I don't know. I've saved some money, but I'm still living under the bridge. I feel like I can't move forward unless I change that. Tomas nodded slowly. You're right. If you want to rebuild your life, you need a place you can call home, even if it's small. But I don't even know where to start, Miguel admitted, with a hint of frustration. Tomas patted his shoulder. Let me help you. I know someone who rents cheap rooms downtown. It's a simple place, but safe. Do you want me to talk to them for you? Miguel looked at him, surprised. He wasn't used to anyone offering so much for him. After a moment, he nodded. Thank you, Tomas. I don't know how to repay you. You don't have to. Just promise me you won't go back to the bridge, the young man replied with a warm smile. That same week, Miguel left the bridge. With the money he had saved and Tomas's help, he rented a small room in a tenement downtown. It was a modest space, peeling walls, a simple bed, and a window facing an inner courtyard. But to him, it was a palace. The first night in his new room, Miguel lay on the bed while Luz slept at his feet. He looked at the ceiling, feeling a mix of disbelief and relief. For the first time in months, he had a place he could call home. Thank you, Anna, he murmured, closing his eyes. Though his wife was no longer there, he felt her love still guiding him, pushing him to rebuild his life. The following days passed with a renewed routine. Miguel kept doing small jobs in the neighborhood, but now he had a clearer purpose. With each task, he felt closer to recovering something he had lost, his self-esteem. However, while working in a garden one day, an unexpected memory struck him. He was pulling weeds when a crumpled, dirty piece of paper got caught in his hands. The flashback was immediate. He was in his office, reviewing documents from his real estate company. He had been distracted, blindly trusting Raul, his partner and friend. When the first rumors of financial trouble reached his ears, Miguel brushed them aside. Raul has always handled the accounts. There's nothing to worry about, he told Anna, who tried to warn him that something wasn't right, but he had been wrong. Raul had siphoned funds and carried out illegal transactions behind Miguel's back. By the time he discovered the fraud, it was already too late. The company was on the brink of bankruptcy, and the banks began seizing his properties. I lost everything because I trusted too much and didn't pay attention to what really mattered, Miguel thought bitterly. He had been swindled and then lost the love of his life. That night, while eating a modest plate of rice in his room, Miguel reflected on his past. He couldn't change what had happened, but he could learn from it. His friend visited him the next day, bringing some blankets and kitchen utensils. How are you feeling? He asked, as they sat in the small dining area. Better, Miguel admitted. I don't have much, but at least I'm not on the street anymore. That's enough for now. Tomas watched him silently before replying. Don't forget that the most important thing isn't how much you have, but what you do with it. If you keep working hard, I'm sure you'll go much further. The man nodded. And for the first time, those words didn't feel like empty comfort. The next day, he returned to the flower shop with Luz by his side. He felt more encouraged, though the road ahead was still long. As he walked, he realized that, for the first time in a long while, his body responded with some energy. Maybe he didn't have much, but what he had earned in these weeks already meant a change. Luz walked with him, wagging her tail enthusiastically as they strolled through the neighborhood. Today we'll do it right, Miguel said to himself as he petted the puppy's head. Luz's company not only gave him comfort, but also a renewed sense of purpose. The flower shop owner, Ernesto, welcomed him with the same kindness as always. Today I want you to go to my sister's place. It's nearby. She needs a deep garden cleanup, the man told him. Miguel agreed, pleased, and headed to the address. As he walked toward Ernesto's sister's house, Luz ran alongside him, jumping here and there. They arrived at a small property with a messy garden. The plants were covered in weeds, and the entrance to the house was barely visible among the overgrowth. He began to work, without stopping for a moment. It felt good. Every time he pulled out a weed or fixed a plant, he felt like he was regaining something he had lost. Luz followed him closely, always near, as if she understood the importance of those small gestures. After a few hours of work, he stopped to rest. Sitting on the edge of the garden, the sun was beginning to set, and a soft breeze brushed his face. Luz, tired but happy, lay beside him. That was when something strange caught his attention. A crumpled piece of paper blown by the wind landed right in front of him. Miguel picked it up, at first thinking it was just trash. But when he unfolded it, he saw it was a lottery ticket. The ticket was dirty, wrinkled, and looked like it had been thrown away. But something about it caught his attention. What if, he thought, not daring to finish the idea. With a mix of curiosity and skepticism, he went to a nearby shop to have the ticket checked. The clerk, a young man with a disinterested look, eyed him with slight disdain as he scratched the numbers on the ticket. "What's going on?" Miguel asked, feeling his heart pounding in his chest. The clerk frowned, and then, suddenly, his eyes widened. "This ticket is a winner, sir." Miguel stared at him, bewildered. "Winner? For how much?" 1,000,000 pesos, the young man exclaimed, with an expression of astonishment that seemed to spread through the small shop. For a moment, he froze. He looked at the ticket, incredulous, as if he couldn't accept what was happening. His mind went back to the cold nights under the bridge, the exhaustion of begging for a piece of bread, the indifferent stares of people. Now, suddenly, everything seemed to take an unthinkable turn. After completing the necessary paperwork, the clerk handed him a package with the money. Miguel, still in shock, took the cash and carefully stored it in his old backpack. At his feet, Luz watched him curiously, wagging her tail. "We did it, Luz. We did it," he murmured, with a mix of disbelief and gratitude. He crouched down to pet the puppy, who licked his hand as if she understood the magnitude of the moment. For the first time in years, Miguel felt the weight of his despair begin to lift. As he walked back to his room, the sound of his footsteps echoed in the empty streets. The backpack felt heavier, not because of the money, but because of the responsibility it now carried. He knew this was a unique opportunity, and he couldn't afford to waste it. When he arrived, he placed the backpack on the bed and sat down beside Luz, who looked at him with those trusting eyes. "Now the hard part begins, little one. But this time, I'm not alone." He woke at dawn, with the first rays of light seeping through the curtains of his small room. Luz was still asleep at his feet, belly up, paws relaxed. The puppy seemed to enjoy the peace the new shelter offered, oblivious to the worries running through her owner's mind. He glanced at the backpack locked away in the closet. Knowing that 1,000,000 pesos were hidden there gave him hope, but also constant fear. "It's too easy to make a mistake," he thought, running a hand over his face. He looked down at Luz, who was starting to wake. The puppy yawned and licked his hand eagerly, as if reminding him he wasn't alone. "Good morning, little one," he murmured with a faint smile. "We've got a lot to do today." That afternoon, Miguel met Tomas in the park, as they had agreed. The man arrived on time, holding a cup of coffee and carrying his usual notebook under his arm. Tomas was one of the few people who had believed in him from the beginning, and Miguel knew he could trust him with what he was about to reveal. "How's everything going?" his friend asked, sitting beside him on a bench. The man hesitated for a moment, looking down at Luz, who was playing with a fallen leaf at his feet. Finally, he took a deep breath and decided it was time to be honest. "I need to tell you something important," he began, his voice trembling. Tomas looked at him with curiosity. "I'm listening. I had a stroke of luck. I found a lottery ticket while working in a garden and, well, I had it checked. I won 1,000,000 pesos. The words fell like a bomb. Tomas blinked several times, trying to process what he had just heard. 1,000,000? He repeated, incredulous. Miguel nodded slowly. Yes. At first I thought it was a joke or a mistake, but it's real. I have it locked away in my room. For a few moments, his friend said nothing. Then, a smile began to spread across his face. Miguel, that's incredible, but why hadn't you told me before? I didn't know how to handle it, the man admitted, rubbing his face. It's a lot of money, and I'm afraid of wasting it. I already ruined everything I once had. What if I fail again? Tomas looked at him seriously before responding. It's normal to feel afraid, but you can't let that paralyze you. This is a second chance, Miguel. If you use it wisely, you can change your life forever. Miguel nodded, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. I want to do something that really matters, something that honors what Ana always believed I could do. I'm thinking of starting a landscaping business. The young man smiled. That sounds perfect. You know you have talent for that. Where do you want to start? I want to find a place to set up the business, but I have no idea how. Could you help me? Of course. But don't rush. First, we need to find the right place, and then we'll figure out the rest. The following weeks were filled with work and learning. Miguel and Tomas went around the city, looking for a location that would suit his needs. However, the task was more difficult than they had expected. Some spaces were too expensive, others were in terrible condition, and many simply didn't fit what Miguel envisioned for his business. This is more complicated than I thought, he commented one afternoon as they walked out of a place that seemed perfect but had an exorbitant price. Tomas, always patient, put a hand on his shoulder. Don't get discouraged. The right place will come, but you need time and a clear head. Don't make rushed decisions. Although Miguel tried to stay optimistic, the days without progress began to fill him with doubt. One afternoon, as they rested on a park bench, he let his frustration out. What if this isn't for me? He said, his voice heavy with uncertainty. What if I'm dreaming of something I'll never achieve? Maybe I should settle for something simpler. His friend looked at him firmly. And if you make mistakes? Miguel, making mistakes doesn't mean you can't try again. What matters is that you don't lose sight of what you truly want. The man sighed, glancing at Luz, who was playing with a little stick nearby. The puppy seemed happy no matter what, and her contagious energy gave him the strength to keep going. Finally, after weeks of searching, they found a small shop in a busy area. Although the space was in poor condition, the price was reasonable, and Miguel felt he could turn it into something special. The walls were peeling, the roof leaked, and the floor was full of cracks. But there was something about the place that gave Miguel a sense of possibility. It's horrible, Miguel said, walking around the space with skepticism. It's perfect, Tomas replied, smiling. It just needs some work, and you know better than anyone how to transform spaces. Though he hesitated at first, he accepted the challenge. Over the following weeks, he worked tirelessly to fix the place. With his hands covered in paint and his body exhausted, little by little, he began to see the shop take shape. Luz, always at his side, barked excitedly while he worked. However, conflict soon appeared. The contractor Miguel had hired to repair the roof deceived him, charging more than necessary and leaving the work half done. When it rained again, the leaks returned, and Miguel felt as if all his effort had been in vain. Why did I trust him? He exclaimed in frustration as he tried to fix the damage on his own. Tomas found him sitting on the shop floor, his head in his hands. I warned you there would be mistakes along the way, he said calmly. But this isn't the end, Miguel. Learn from it and keep going. Although the words comforted him, he couldn't help but feel insecure. The fear of failure still lurked, but he forced himself to move forward. Finally, after weeks of effort, the shop was ready. The opening of Luz Verde had been modest but meaningful. The first days of work in his shop were slow, Passers-by looked at him with curiosity, but few stopped to ask about his services. Miguel knew it would be a long road, but he also understood that he had already come farther than he ever imagined months ago when he lived under the bridge. That morning, while watering the plants displayed in front of the shop, a customer finally decided to walk in. It was a woman in her 50s, with a timid smile and a folder in her hand. "Good morning," Miguel said, wiping his hands on a cloth. "How can I help you?" "I'm looking for someone to fix my garden. It's very neglected, and I want something that brings it back to life," she explained, handing him the folder with photos of the place. Miguel took the images, examining them carefully. "It has potential," he said, pointing to a corner of the garden where wilted rose bushes could be seen. "We could revitalize these areas with vibrant flowers and maybe add a stone path. What do you think?" The woman nodded, excited. "That sounds perfect. When can you start?" "We can schedule it for this week," he replied with a smile. As he took down the details, he felt a surge of gratitude. This first customer was a small step, but for him, it meant so much more. While working on the woman's garden, Anna's memory began to flood his mind. It was inevitable. Anna had always been his greatest inspiration. He remembered how, years earlier, they had designed a small garden together in the house they shared. "Flowers should always be in the center," she had said, with her radiant smile. "They're the first sign that a place is full of life." The memory drew a smile from him, but also left a lump in his throat. "Anna, I wish you could see this," he murmured as he planted the first rose bushes. Luz, as always, ran toward him with a stick in her mouth, as if trying to distract him from his sadness. Miguel crouched down and stroked her head. "Thank you, little one. You always know how to cheer me up." That night, after finishing the job, Miguel returned to the shop to close the register and review his accounts. Although the income was modest, he felt genuine satisfaction seeing how little by little he was building something that gave meaning to his life. However, the silence of the empty shop made him reflect. He took out a photo of Anna that he always kept in his wallet and placed it on the desk. "I miss you so much, Anna," he whispered. "There are days when I feel like I'm moving forward, but then I remember you're not here to share it with me. Everything I do is with you in mind, in what you always believed I could achieve." The sound of Luz shifting on the floor pulled him out of his thoughts. The puppy came over and rested her head on his leg as if to comfort him. Miguel smiled and stroked her ears. "You're right. Anna wouldn't want me to sink into sadness. We'll keep moving forward, okay?" The next day, a new customer came into the shop. This time, it was a young man who wanted to transform his backyard into a space for family gatherings. The project was more ambitious than the previous one, and although Miguel felt nervous at first, he decided to take on the challenge. Tomás visited him that afternoon to see how things were going. "How do you feel about this new project?" he asked as they walked around the shop. "A bit intimidated, but excited," Miguel admitted. "It's a big step, and I don't want to make mistakes. That's normal, but remember, every mistake is a chance to learn. Besides, you have talent. Trust yourself," Tomás replied, giving him a pat on the shoulder. The new project demanded much more time and effort. He worked long hours, designing and planning every detail. Doubts kept appearing from time to time, but whenever he felt overwhelmed, he thought of Anna and how she had always believed in him. One afternoon, while working in the client's backyard, he found a small flower that had sprouted between the stones. The sight stopped him in his tracks. The flower was delicate, yet it had managed to survive in a hostile environment. "That's what you always said, Anna," he thought, gently touching it. "That beauty can emerge in the most unexpected places." He decided to leave the flower untouched, incorporating it into the final design as a reminder that even in the darkest moments, life finds a way to break through. On the day of the project's presentation, the client was impressed. The backyard had been transformed into a welcoming, vibrant space. with carefully selected plants and a stone path leading to a pergola surrounded by flowers. "It's more than I imagined," the client said, shaking Miguel's hand. "Thank you for making this possible." Miguel felt his effort had been worth it. As he left, with Luz walking beside him, he looked up at the sky and whispered, "Thank you, Ana. This achievement is yours too." That night, while closing the shop, he reflected on how far he had come since those days under the bridge. The memory of Ana was still there, not as a burden, but as a light guiding him on his path. He looked at Luz, sleeping on her improvised bed in a corner of the shop, and felt deep gratitude. "I wouldn't have made it without you," he said softly, stroking the puppy's head. Miguel knew the road would still be long and full of obstacles, but for the first time in years, he had something that couldn't be bought or lost: hope. Weeks turned into months, and Luz Verde began to gain recognition in the city. Early customers started recommending Miguel for his creativity and dedication. His ability to transform outdoor spaces into vibrant, lively places made him a reference in garden design. The business grew faster than he had anticipated, and soon he realized he couldn't do everything alone. One afternoon, while reviewing the accounts at his small desk in the shop, Tomas came in smiling, carrying 2 coffees. "How's everything going, boss?" he asked, placing a coffee in front of Miguel. The man sighed, looking up. "It's going well, but I'm exhausted. I can't handle it all. Between designing, working on the gardens, and dealing with customers, I feel like I barely have time to breathe." Tomas nodded. "That means it's time to expand. You need a team." The idea intimidated him at first. He had learned to rely only on himself after losing everything, and trusting others felt difficult. But Tomas encouraged him. "Miguel, you can't do it all alone. Hiring a team won't just ease your load, it'll also let the business grow faster. And think about how many people might be looking for an opportunity, just like you once needed." Tomas's words resonated deeply with Miguel. He remembered the days when he had desperately searched for a helping hand, and how that help had changed his life. In the following weeks, he posted ads looking for employees. Little by little, he began to build a small team. He hired 2 young men with experience in gardening and landscaping, and a woman with a special gift for floral design. "Welcome to Luz Verde," he said on their first day together at the shop. "This isn't just a business. It's an opportunity to create something beautiful and help others find joy in their spaces. I'm excited to have you here." The new employees joined with enthusiasm, and soon the shop was filled with energy. Luz, the loyal puppy, seemed to enjoy the company, running around and receiving attention from everyone. With the team in place, he was able to take on bigger projects. They transformed family home gardens, schoolyards, and even spaces for small businesses. Each satisfied client represented another step toward consolidating his dream. One day, while working in a community park, one of the young employees, named Andres, asked him a question that left him thoughtful. "Boss, where did you get the idea to start this business?" Miguel paused for a moment, looking at the flowers he was planting. "It was because of someone very special. My wife, Ana. She always said that plants were a reminder that even in the worst moments, life keeps growing." Andres nodded, visibly moved. "She must be very proud of you, wherever she is." Miguel smiled, feeling a lump in his throat. "I hope so. Everything I do with her in mind." The business kept thriving, and over time, he managed to rent a larger space for Luz Verde. The new location had a showroom to display design ideas, a small nursery, and an office where Miguel could comfortably meet clients. One afternoon, while organizing some documents, he found the old photo of Ana he always carried with him. He placed it in a frame and set it on his desk. Looking at it, he murmured, "We made it, Ana. Thank you for believing in me, even when I didn't." Luz, who was sleeping at his feet, lifted her head and looked at him curiously. Miguel smiled and bent down to pet her. "And you too, little one." I don't know what I would have done without you. With the business growing, he also decided to give something back to the community. He started a program to teach gardening and landscaping to people living on the streets, offering them a chance to learn a skill that could help them move forward. Tomas, who had been by his side every step of the way, watched as Miguel spoke to the program's participants one afternoon. "You're an example, Miguel," he said when the meeting ended. "I'm only doing what you did for me," Miguel replied, with a grateful smile. On the day they celebrated Luz Verde's first anniversary, Miguel organized a small gathering at the shop. He invited his team, Tomas, and some of the first clients who had trusted him. The atmosphere was filled with laughter and joy. The flowers and lights decorating the place gave it a magical air, as if the space itself reflected all the effort and passion Miguel had poured into his dream. As he walked among the guests, Luz ran toward him, carrying a small stick in her mouth. Miguel picked her up and stroked her, laughing. "You're always with me, aren't you, little one?" He paused for a moment, looking around. The transformation in his life was incredible, from living under a bridge to leading a successful business. But beyond the money or success, what truly filled him with pride was having regained his purpose and his ability to dream. That night, before closing the shop, he stood for a moment in front of Anna's photo. "Thank you for always being with me, Anna," he said, his voice breaking. "All of this is for you, and also for me. I've learned to live with your memory, not as a burden, but as a light that guides me." Luz, as if she understood the moment, sat beside him, resting her head on his leg. Miguel stroked the puppy, feeling a peace he hadn't experienced in years. The journey had been long and difficult. But now he knew he was exactly where he was meant to be. And so, dear friends, we come to the end of this story. I've loved sharing it with you, and I hope you've enjoyed listening to it. Don't forget to subscribe and give it a like so I can keep bringing you stories of kindness, love, gratitude, and hope. Leave me a comment if you liked it. Sending you a hug, and see you in the next story.